Hello everyone, welcome back, JavaMentor.net here, and in today's video let's learn about mocking. So, for today's video I invented one small problem. Person wants to buy a car and he needs to pay tax for that car. But in different countries you have different taxes for a car. And for that reason we have this car tax repository, so tax for cars, and we are fetching those taxes from the database because that taxes based on different countries, we keep that data in the database. I mean, in our example, I just hard-coded those taxes here, but let's pretend that we are firing some SQL query to fetch those taxes. And the rules are the following. For the US, tax is 10%, for the Japan, 20%, and for all other countries, tax is 15%. On the other hand, we also keep track of persons inside our database. So all persons are stored in the database and every person has ID, has first name, and has information, does that person already have a car? Because if it does, if that person does have a car, then he will need to pay double taxes, as you can see in this logic here. So first of all, we are fetching from the database person based on his ID. Then we are fetching tax based on the country. So we have that data. Then we check if person already has a car. That means that on initial price he will need to pay double tax, and if he doesn't have a car already, then he just need to pay normal tax. Now let's say that we want to write unit test for this car tax calculator. Let's create one unit test for that. Car tax calculator test. We are doing everything the same as in previous video. Let's say test tax, whatever, some name. We want to annotate our test with test annotation, right? Then we want to say new car tax calculator. As you can see, this tax calculator requires some dependencies through the constructor. Okay, so we pass some dependencies, we pass person repository, and we pass car tax repository, right? Then we say calculator, and then we invoke our method just to test that method. Let's say that we want person with ID 1. We say that that person is located in United States and initial price of the car is, I don't know, 10,000. Result. And we want to say assert assertions, choose assert J, don't choose JUnit. Assertions, assert that result is equal to, and now it's a good question, what are our actual expectations, right? Let's see. Well, in our person repository we hard-coded only one person, so we are not really going to the database to fetch person. We are just retrieving one person which already has a car, right? Okay, and our car tax repository will return us 10% for US. Okay, so for our person, he already has a car, as we saw in that hard-coded data, and he's from US, which means he will pay double tax for US, which is 20%, which means that the result should be 12,000, right? And this is the way how this test should pass. Let's see it in action. Now let's introduce one bug just to see if our test will fail, right? So car tax calculator, let's say here we introduce some bug. This is bug, obviously. Let's run a test. Okay, our test is failing. it's complaining that we are expecting one number and the actual number is something else. But let me show you something even more interesting. If we try to introduce bug here, let's say that those numbers are different, so now we clearly have a bug, right? Let's try our test to see what will happen. Our test will fail. But you remember in the previous video that I told you that if this test fails, this is a unit test, that means that bug is inside this class, right? Inside car tax calculator class. But if we go here, bug is not here. This class is okay. Bug is inside our car tax repository. So something is weird. The thing is, when we write unit test for car tax calculator, we are testing only that unit, and we only want test to fails only if something inside this car tax calculator class is broken. We don't want our unit test for car tax calculator to fails if something is wrong inside those repositories. So we want to assume that those two dependencies are working fine. Keyword, we want to assume that dependencies are okay. We want to mock those dependencies. Let's do that. We will use one library that, not surprisingly, is coming with Spring tests, right? Okay, Mockito.mock, and then we want to say we want to mock person repository, and we want to mock car tax repository. Okay, and now instead of passing those real repositories to our calculator, instead of passing real dependencies through the constructor, we will pass those mocks. We will do something like this: person repository, and this is going as a second parameter to the constructor, car tax repository. Let's first finish the code, and then I will explain you what's going on and what's everything all about. So we want to say Mockito when this dependency, when we invoke this method on this dependency with this parameter, then we want that dependency to return us this person, new person, and then we can configure our mock person here. We can say our mock person set first name is mock person name, and mock person set already has a car false, let's say, or let's set it to true. Okay, and the same thing we want to say for car tax repository. Don't worry, we will explain what's going on here. Mockito.when we call car tax repository method getTax with parameter US, then return, and for US we want to return this number, right? What we just did? Well, we created instance of car tax calculator and we passed some dependencies through the constructor. But we didn't pass real person repository and real car tax repository with real world logic. No, we passed fake objects there, mock objects. And we reconfigured those mock objects in the following fashion. We said, assume that whenever person repository, so assume when person repository get by ID with this parameter is called, then this mock should return this person. And we set the data for this person here. In the similar fashion, we configured second mock. So whenever this mock car tax repository get tax is called with this parameter, return this number. Okay, let's start our test now to see if it will pass. Okay, it does pass. Let's try to introduce a bug inside car tax calculator. Our test should fail because we are testing this unit, car tax calculator. So that unit test should fail. As you see, our test is failing, and that is the same as previously, but if we introduce bug inside car tax repository, our test won't fail. So our unit car tax calculator is okay, and that's why this unit test is not failing. You might say, okay, but with bug is present and test is not failing, something is wrong. Yeah, the things are wrong. We didn't wrote car tax repository unit test. We should write that, and that test should fail. Another thing that may pop up on your mind is, okay, now we mocked this car tax repository for this parameter to return proper value. But what if we try to, inside this test, pass another parameter? Well, that won't work. And you are right, it won't work. For another parameter, you need another test, another mocking, and so on and so on. So in another test, you can say, okay, here for Japan, you need to return, I don't know, 0.2, and then Japan and blah, blah, blah. Change the data, basically. If you have plenty of tests, and only the data is different, then you should take a look at parameterized tests. I won't cover them, they're not like essential for beginners, but you may want to look at that. But maybe when those classes interact, in some scenario, in some use case, they might not work well together. And you're correct. They maybe work separately, independently fine, but together they are not okay. And for that, we need to write integration tests to test integration between our components. So one integration test will cover, more than one class in one unit, let's say it like that. For the integration test, see you in the next video.